The darkness of space stretched endlessly in every direction. Stars burned like distant candles against the black velvet of the void. In this particular corner of the galaxy, far from the busy trade routes and populated worlds, nothing had happened for thousands of years. It was quiet. It was peaceful. It was boring. That was about to change. High Admiral sat in his command chair aboard the Imperial flagship Eternal Dominion. He was a species that had ruled this part of the galaxy for over 12,000 years. His body was covered in dark blue scales that shimmered under the bridge lights. 4 yellow eyes scanned the various displays and screens that surrounded him. His hands, each with 6 clawed fingers, rested on the arms of his chair. Was old by the standards of his people. He had served the Empire for nearly 300 years. He had fought in 17 major wars and countless smaller conflicts. He had watched entire species surrender to might. He had seen worlds burn and civilizations crumble. Nothing surprised him anymore. Or so he thought. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion was enormous. It stretched for nearly 100 meters, filled with crew members working at various stations. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing star maps, fleet positions, and sensor data. Everything was designed to show the power and majesty of the Empire. "Admiral," called out one of his officers, a younger named. "We are receiving an emergency transmission from the 3rd Battle Group." His eyes narrowed. The 3rd Battle Group was conducting routine patrol operations in the outer spiral arm, far from any known threats. There should be nothing there that could cause an emergency. "Put it through," he ordered. The main display flickered and the image of Fleet Commander appeared. Was a capable officer, someone had personally selected for the position. But something was wrong. Looked afraid. His scales had turned pale and his 4 eyes were wide with what could only be described as terror. "High Admiral," said, his voice shaking. "We have encountered an unknown vessel. We attempted standard first contact protocols, but they refused to surrender. We engaged them in combat." Leaned forward, "And what is the status of the battle?" There was a long pause. Behind could see explosions and crew members running in panic. Alarms were blaring. The image flickered with static. "We are losing," whispered. "I do not understand how, but we are losing. The vessel is small, barely 300 meters in length, but our weapons cannot hit it. And their weapons are cutting through our shields like they do not exist." Felt something cold settle in his stomach. "How many ships have you lost?" 17 so far, and they have not killed anyone. They are targeting our weapons systems with impossible precision. It is as if they know exactly where to strike." The image flickered again. Could hear more explosions in the background. "I am transmitting all tactical data to you," continued. "You must warn the Empire. These creatures, these humans, they are unlike anything we have ever encountered. They refuse to bow. They refuse to surrender. And now—" The transmission cut out. Static filled the screen. Stared at the blank display for a long moment. Around him, the bridge had gone silent. Every officer had stopped working to watch the transmission. They had all heard the fear in its voice. They had all seen the impossible sight of warships being destroyed by a single small vessel. "Get that transmission back," ordered. "Contact any ship in the 3rd Battle Group. I want to know what is happening." His officers scrambled to obey. Minutes passed, then more minutes. The silence on the bridge grew heavier with each passing moment. Finally, officer looked up from his station. His face had gone pale. "Admiral," he said quietly, "I cannot contact anyone in the 3rd Battle Group. All 47 ships have gone dark." Stood up slowly. His legs felt weak, something that had not happened since he was a young soldier facing his first battle. "Show me the tactical data transmitted," he ordered. The main display came to life, showing a recording of the battle. Watched as the small human vessel danced through the fleet like a leaf in the wind. Plasma bolts that should have vaporized it missed by mere meters. Missiles that should have tracked it lost their lock and flew off into space. And every time the human vessel fired back, something on a ship stopped working. Weapons arrays went dark. Engine systems failed. Shield generators overloaded, but the crews remained alive. The humans were not trying to kill, they were trying to disable. Impossible, whispered. This is impossible. But the evidence was there, playing out before his eyes. In the span of 6 minutes, a single vessel had defeated the pride of the Imperial fleet. Reached for the emergency beacon that would summon the Imperial War Council. His hand was shaking. In 12,000 years, the Empire had never faced anything like this. The humans had arrived, and everything was about to change. 6 hours earlier, before the battle that would shake the foundations of the Empire, things had been very different. The third battle group floated in formation near a small, unremarkable star. 47 warships of various sizes, from the massive dreadnoughts that stretched for kilometers to the smaller destroyers that darted between them like fish around whales. Together, they represented enough firepower to destroy entire solar systems. Fleet Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Wrath. He was reviewing patrol reports, a task that bored him greatly. Nothing ever happened in this sector. It was a punishment posting, given to officers who had displeased someone important, had made the mistake of suggesting that the Empire's expansion policies were too aggressive. Now he was stuck out here, watching empty space. Commander, called his sensor officer, I am detecting an anomaly at coordinate 739. Looked up with mild interest. An anomaly was better than nothing. What kind of anomaly? I am not certain. There is a distortion in space-time, something I have never seen before. It almost looks like a ship emerging from some form of faster-than-light travel, but the signature is completely wrong. Walked over to the sensor station. The display showed a swirling vortex of energy, blue and white against the blackness of space. As he watched, something emerged from the center. It was a ship, but unlike any ship had ever seen. The vessel was small, perhaps 300 meters from bow to stern. Its hull was made of some kind of gray metal, covered in what looked like primitive sensor arrays and communication dishes. Strange symbols were painted on its side, along with the image of a planet surrounded by some kind of laurel wreath. Magnify, ordered. The image grew larger. Now he could see more details. The ship had what appeared to be chemical rocket engines at its rear. Along its hull were mounted various weapon systems, things that looked like projectile launchers and missile tubes. There were also several directed energy weapons, but they were laughably small compared to standards. Felt his mandibles click with amusement. This was clearly a primitive species, one that had just developed faster-than-light travel. They had probably stumbled upon space by accident. It happened occasionally. The Empire would either assimilate them or destroy them, depending on their usefulness. Run their ship configuration through the database, ordered. See if we have any records of this species. The sensor officer worked for a moment, then shook his head. No matches, Commander. This is a completely unknown species. Interesting. Returned to his command chair. Open a hailing frequency. Let us welcome these newcomers to civilized space. The communication officer nodded and worked his console. Channel open, Commander. Cleared his throat and spoke in the formal tone used for first contact situations. Unknown vessel, this is Fleet Commander of the Imperial Fleet. You have entered territory claimed by the Empire. Identify yourselves and state your intentions. There was a pause. Then a response came, in a language that the translation matrices struggled to interpret. The computer worked for several seconds before producing a comprehensible version. This is Captain Daniel of the United Earth ship Resolute. We are explorers from a planet called Earth. We come in peace and seek only to establish diplomatic relations with other spacefaring civilizations. We mean you no harm. Exchanged a look with his second-in-command. The message was surprisingly sophisticated for a primitive species. Most newcomers to space babbled about peace while secretly planning conquest. These humans seemed to genuinely believe what they were saying. How naive thought. Captain replied, "Your vessel has entered sovereign territory of the Empire without authorization. According to imperial law, you must surrender your ship and crew for processing. If you cooperate, you will be treated fairly. If you resist, you will be destroyed." There was another pause, longer this time. When the response came, the human captain's voice had changed. It was still calm, but there was something harder beneath the surface. "I appreciate your position, Fleet Commander, but I need to respectfully decline. We are not here to surrender anything. We came to talk, to learn about each other, maybe to become friends. If that is not possible, we will leave, but we will not submit to any demand for surrender." Felt a spark of irritation. He had given these primitives a chance to survive, and they had thrown it back in his face. Very well. They would learn their place the hard way. "Move the fleet into standard intimidation formation," he ordered. "Surround the vessel. Show them exactly how outmatched they are." The 47 ships of the 3rd Battle Group began to move. Dreadnoughts, cruisers, destroyers, and support vessels spread out in a sphere around the tiny human ship. From the Resolute's perspective, it must have looked like the walls of a prison closing in. Watched with satisfaction as the formation took shape. This display of overwhelming force had broken the will of hundreds of species over the. Even the most stubborn enemies usually reconsidered their position when surrounded by enough firepower to crack planets. "Hail them again," he ordered. "Captain, as you can see, you are surrounded. You have no hope of escape. This is your final opportunity to surrender peacefully. If you do not comply, we will open fire." The response was immediate this time. "Fleet Commander, I see your ships. They are impressive, but I have to be honest with you. We have been through a lot to get here. My people spent generations looking up at the stars, wondering if we were alone. Now we finally have the chance to meet another intelligent species, and your first move is to threaten us. That is disappointing." Felt his mandibles click with annoyance. "Your disappointment is irrelevant. Surrender or be destroyed." "I am sorry, but no. We do not surrender. It is not really in our nature." "Then you leave me no choice." Turned to his weapons officer. "Target their engines. Let us show them the futility of resistance." The weapons officer nodded and worked his console. Across the fleet, plasma cannons hummed to life. Targeting systems locked onto the small gray vessel. "Fire!" 100 beams of superheated plasma streaked across space toward the Resolute. Each beam carried enough energy to vaporize a mountain. Together, they should have reduced the human ship to scattered atoms. None of them connected. Watched in disbelief as the human vessel moved. It did not just dodge. It danced. The ship twisted and rolled through the barrage with a grace that seemed to mock the laws of physics. Plasma bolts that should have struck it dead center missed by centimeters. The Resolute flowed through the attack like water through fingers. What stood up from his chair? "How is this possible?" Fire again. Another volley. Another miss. The human ship continued its impossible dance, slipping through gaps in the plasma fire that should not have existed. "They are predicting our targeting solutions," the weapons officer reported, his voice confused. "Somehow, they know where we are going to fire before we fire." "That is impossible. Our targeting systems are the most advanced in the galaxy." "I know, Commander, but they are doing it. Look at their movement patterns. They begin evading before our weapons even discharge." Stared at the display, watching the small ship weave through his fleet's assault. His mind struggled to process what he was seeing. No species had ever done this. No technology should be capable of this. Then the humans fired back. Captain Daniel gripped the arms of his command chair as the Resolute twisted through another plasma barrage. The artificial gravity systems strained to keep the crew from being thrown around as the ship executed maneuvers that would have torn lesser vessels apart. "Defensive systems holding, Captain," reported Lieutenant from the tactical station. She was a young woman with short red hair and a face full of freckles. Despite the chaos of battle, her voice remained steady. "Their weapons are powerful, but the evasion algorithms are staying ahead of their targeting computers." Daniel nodded. The Resolute was not the largest ship humanity had ever built, but it was definitely its quantum computing core could process information faster than any conventional system, predicting enemy fire patterns and calculating escape vectors in microseconds. Combined with the ship's advanced maneuvering thrusters, it made the Resolute almost impossible to hit. "Have they responded to any of our communication attempts?" Daniel asked. Commander Samuel Grant looked up from the communication station. He was a tall black man with gray at his temples and calm brown eyes that had seen many difficult situations. "Nothing but demands for surrender and threats of destruction. I do not think they are interested in talking right now." Daniel sighed. He had hoped this would go differently. Humanity's first contact with an intelligent alien species, and they had immediately resorted to violence. It was not exactly the optimistic scenario that science fiction writers had imagined for centuries. "All right," he said quietly. "If they will not listen to words, maybe they will listen to actions. Lieutenant, target the flagship's primary weapons array. Precision strike. I want to disable, not destroy." His fingers flew across her console. "Aye, Captain. Charging, target acquired." Daniel looked at the main display, where the massive alien flagship loomed like a mountain of metal. Whoever commanded that ship had made a choice. They had chosen violence over diplomacy. Now Daniel had to show them the consequences of that choice. "Fire!" The Resolute's magnetic hummed with power. Deep within the ship, tungsten projectiles the size of soda cans were accelerated to a significant fraction of the speed of light. At those velocities, they carried more kinetic energy than nuclear bombs. The aliens had advanced shield technology. Daniel had watched their energy barriers deflect the heat of plasma weapons and the force of missile explosions. But shields were designed to react to incoming threats, to detect them and compensate. They needed time, even if only milliseconds, to function. The projectiles crossed the distance between ships in less than the blink of an eye. The alien shields had no time to react. They had not even detected the incoming rounds before impact occurred. On the alien flagship, a section of hull simply ceased to exist. The primary weapons array, a massive structure that had been preparing to fire another volley at the Resolute, was gone. In its place was a hole large enough to fly a shuttle through. "Direct hit," reported. "Target disabled. No secondary explosions. Their crew should be fine." Daniel felt a small measure of relief. He had not wanted to kill anyone today. The alien fleet had attacked them unprovoked, but that did not mean their crews deserved to die. Most soldiers were just ordinary people following orders. They had families, friends, lives beyond their uniforms. Daniel refused to forget that, even in the heat of battle. "Target the next ship," he ordered. "Same profile, weapons systems only." "Aye, Captain." The Resolute continued its dance through the alien fleet, striking again and again with surgical precision. Rounds tore through weapons arrays and shield generators. Missiles, guided by the quantum computer's predictions, found gaps in defensive formations and delivered their payloads exactly where they would do the most damage without causing casualties. Ship after ship in the alien fleet went dark, their offensive capabilities neutralized. And through it all, the Resolute remained untouched, a gray ghost slipping through the gaps between plasma bolts and missile barrages. Daniel watched the battle unfold and felt a strange mixture of pride and sadness. Pride in his ship and crew, who were performing flawlessly under pressure. Sadness that it had come to this, that humanity's first meeting with alien life had turned into a fight. We could have been friends, he thought. We could have learned so much from each other. Why does it always have to be this way? But he knew the answer. It was the same reason humans had fought each other throughout their history. Fear, pride, the belief that different meant dangerous. These aliens saw humanity as a threat, something to be conquered or destroyed. They could not imagine any other relationship. Daniel intended to show them a different way. Fleet Commander stood in the center of his bridge, watching the impossible unfold around him. His flagship's main weapons array was gone, ripped away by a projectile that his sensors had not even detected until after impact. Similar damage was being reported across the fleet. 23 ships disabled, then 30, then 35. And still the human vessel danced through their fire, untouchable and relentless. How, whispered, his voice barely audible above the alarms. How is this happening? His tactical officer, a young female named, was cycling through sensor data with increasing desperation. Their projectiles are moving too fast for our shields to react. Our defensive systems are designed to detect incoming threats and adjust shield frequencies accordingly. But these kinetic weapons strike before detection is possible. Then use predictive targeting. Calculate where they will be and fire there. We have tried, Commander. Their movement patterns do not follow any combat doctrine in our database. Every time we think we have predicted their next move, they do something unexpected. It is as if they are thinking faster than our computers can model. Felt something cold settle in his chest. Fear. Real fear, something he had not experienced in over a century. He was losing. A single primitive vessel was defeating the pride of the fleet, and he could not stop it. His second-in-command approached, his scales pale with shock. Commander, we are receiving damage reports from across the fleet. 41 ships have lost primary weapons capability, but there have been no casualties. Turned to stare at him. No casualties, that is impossible. We have been fighting for nearly an hour. I know, but it is true. The humans are targeting our weapons and propulsion systems with extreme precision. They are deliberately avoiding areas where crew members are stationed. They are not trying to kill us. They are just stopping us from fighting. Looked back at the main display, where the small gray ship continued its impossible dance. He thought about what his second-in-command had said. The humans were winning. They could destroy the entire fleet if they wanted to, but they were choosing not to kill. Why? What kind of species showed mercy to an enemy that had attacked them without provocation? Open a channel to the human vessel, ordered. His voice was quiet, defeated. Commander. Do it. I need to speak with their captain. The communication officer worked his console. After a moment he nodded. Channel open. Took a deep breath. The words he was about to speak would haunt him for the rest of his life. But he had no choice. His fleet was crippled. His crew were depending on him. Pride was a luxury he could no longer afford. Human vessel, this is Fleet Commander. I request a ceasefire. I wish to negotiate. The response came after a brief pause. The human captain's voice was calm, almost gentle. Fleet Commander, this is Captain. I am glad to hear that. We never wanted to fight in the first place. We are standing down offensive operations now. True to his word, the human ship stopped firing. It settled into a stationary position, hovering in the middle of the crippled fleet like a teacher waiting for unruly students to calm down. Felt a complex mixture of emotions. Relief that the battle was over, shame that he had lost, confusion about what kind of enemy showed mercy in victory. Captain, he said slowly, I do not understand. You have defeated us. You could destroy what remains of my fleet. Why do you hold back? Because destroying you was never our goal, the human replied. We came here looking for friends, not enemies. You attacked us and we defended ourselves. But that does not mean we want you dead. Your ships have crews. Those crews have families waiting for them to come home. We are not in the business of making widows and orphans. Was silent for a long moment. In 12,000 years of galactic history, no one had ever spoken to a fleet commander this way. The Empire conquered or was conquered. There was no middle ground. There was no mercy. But these humans operated by different rules. "What do you want?" finally asked. The same thing we wanted when we arrived: to talk, to learn about each other, to see if we can find common ground. Is that something you are willing to do? Looked around his damaged bridge. His officers stared back at him, waiting for his decision. They had all heard the humans' words. They had all seen the battle. They knew that the Empire's usual tactics had failed completely. "Yes," said, "I am willing to talk." "Good, then let us begin." The negotiations that followed were unlike anything Fleet Commander had experienced in his long career. He had participated in many diplomatic discussions over the years, but they always followed the same pattern. The stronger party dictated terms. The weaker party accepted them or faced destruction. This was different. Captain did not behave like a victor. He did not make demands or issue ultimatums. Instead, he asked questions. He wanted to know about history, culture, government, and beliefs. He shared information about humanity in return. He spoke of Earth, a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. He spoke of human history, full of wars and conflicts, but also of art, music, science, and philosophy. "We have made many mistakes," admitted during one of their conversations. "We have fought each other, hurt each other, nearly destroyed ourselves more than once, but we have also learned. We have grown. We have come to understand that cooperation is better than conflict, that building is better than destroying." Found this difficult to believe. Every species seeks dominance. It is the fundamental law of nature: the strong survive, the weak perish. "Maybe that is how it works for most species," replied. "But humans are stubborn. We do not accept laws just because someone tells us they exist. We question everything. We push back. When someone tells us something is impossible, we take it as a challenge. And if someone attacks you, we defend ourselves fiercely, but we do not enjoy killing. Every life has value, even the lives of our enemies. If there is any way to resolve a conflict without bloodshed, we will find it." Thought about his crippled fleet: 47 ships disabled but intact, hundreds of thousands of crew members shaken but alive. The humans could have killed them all. They had chosen not to. "Your weapons," said, "those projectiles that move faster than our shields can react. How is this possible?" Smiled slightly. "Simple physics, really. We use magnetic fields to accelerate metal slugs to a large fraction of light speed. At those velocities, kinetic energy is enormous. Your shields are designed to react to incoming threats, but they need time to detect and adjust. Our projectiles do not give them that time. But we abandoned kinetic weapons thousands of years ago. They were considered primitive, inefficient." Maybe they are, but sometimes the simplest solutions are the best ones. Your plasma weapons are impressive, but they move relatively slowly and are easy to track. Are crude by comparison, but they get the job done. Shook his head slowly. "You have turned our own assumptions against us. You found weaknesses we did not know existed. That is what humans do. We adapt. We improvise. We look at problems from angles that other people miss. It is not because we are smarter. It is because we refuse to accept that there is only one way to do things." While and talked, the crews of both fleets watched and waited. On the ships, there was confusion and fear. They had never been defeated like this. They had never encountered an enemy who showed mercy and victory. They did not know what to expect. On the Resolute, the atmosphere was different. There was tension, certainly, but also hope. The crew had performed brilliantly under pressure, and now they had a chance to achieve something unprecedented: peaceful contact with an alien species. Lieutenant sat at her tactical station, monitoring the alien fleet for any signs of renewed hostility. She had been on edge since the battle ended, unable to fully relax despite the ceasefire. "You can stand down, Lieutenant," said Commander Grant, approaching her station. "I do not think they are going to try anything." Shook her head. "With respect, sir, we thought they wanted to talk when we first arrived. Then they surrounded us and opened fire. I am not making that mistake again." Grant nodded slowly. "Fair enough, but do not forget why we are here. First contact is messy. There are always misunderstandings, cultural clashes, moments where things go wrong. The important thing is how we respond to those moments." "We responded by crippling their fleet." "Yes, but we did not destroy it. We showed them that we can defend ourselves, but we also showed them restraint. That matters. It shows them what kind of people we are." Considered this. She had joined the space exploration program because she believed in humanity's potential to do great things among the stars. Finding intelligent alien life had always been the ultimate dream. Now that dream was becoming reality, and it was complicated, scary, not at all what she had imagined, but also exciting, deeply, profoundly exciting. "Do you think they will actually become our allies?" she asked. Grant smiled slightly. "I think it is too early to tell, but I think we have a chance, and sometimes that is all you can ask for." On the flagship, similar conversations were taking place. Officers gathered in small groups, whispering about what they had witnessed. Many of them had fought in previous wars. They had seen enemy fleets shattered, enemy worlds conquered, enemy populations enslaved or exterminated. That was how the Empire operated. That was how things had always been done. The humans had shown them something different. The young tactical officer approached her commander after one of his negotiation sessions with Captain. Was sitting alone, staring out the viewport at the small gray human ship. "Commander," she said hesitantly, "may I speak freely?" Did not turn around, of course. "I have been analyzing the human ship's capabilities. Based on what we observed during the battle, I believe they could have destroyed our entire fleet in approximately 4 minutes if they had been trying to kill us." Was silent for a moment. "I reached the same conclusion." "Then why? Why did they hold back? It makes no strategic sense. If you have the power to destroy your enemy, you use it. That is basic military doctrine." Now did turn to face her. His 4 eyes were thoughtful, troubled. "I have been asking myself the same question. I put it to Captain during our discussions. Do you know what he said?" Shook her head. "He said that having power and using it are not the same thing. He said that his people judge themselves not by their strength, but by how they treat those weaker than themselves." Paused, letting those words sink in. "He said that every person on our ships has family somewhere, waiting for them to come home. He did not want to be responsible for orphans and widows." Stared at him. "That is, I do not understand. Showing mercy to a defeated enemy is showing weakness. It invites future attacks." "That is what I told him. Do you know what he said to that?" "No." "He said that showing mercy is not weakness. He said it takes more strength to spare an enemy than to kill one. He said that anyone can destroy. It takes real courage to build something instead." Was quiet for a long time. Finally she spoke again. "Do you believe him?" Looked back out the viewport at the human ship. "I believe that he believes it. Whether he is right, I do not know. But I am beginning to wonder if perhaps the Empire has been wrong about some things. Perhaps strength is not the only thing that matters. Perhaps there are other ways to build a civilization." It was a dangerous thought, revolutionary, the kind of thinking that had gotten officers demoted or worse in the past, but could not shake it. The humans had shown him something new, something that challenged everything he thought he knew about the universe. And he wanted to understand it. The negotiations continued for 3 standard days. Captain and fleet commander met via holographic link multiple times each day, slowly building a foundation for understanding. They discussed trade, territory, diplomatic protocols, and the possibility of formal relations between humanity and the Empire. It was not easy. There were moments of tension. misunderstandings that threatened to derail the entire process. The concept of empire was fundamentally different from human ideas about nations and alliances. The humans believed in voluntary association, in partnerships based on mutual benefit. They had only ever known dominance and submission. But slowly, carefully, progress was made. You need to understand, explained during one session, that humanity does not want to conquer you. We do not want to rule over other species. We just want to coexist, trade, share knowledge, learn from each other. Found this concept difficult to grasp. But if you have the power to conquer, why would you choose not to? Because conquest does not lead to anything good. You might win the war, but you lose something more important. You lose the chance to make friends. You lose the opportunity to learn from different perspectives. You become isolated, surrounded by enemies who are just waiting for you to show weakness. The Empire has maintained control for 12,000 years. And in that time, how many species have you destroyed? How many civilizations have been wiped out because they would not submit? How much knowledge and culture and potential has been lost forever? Did not have an answer. The Empire's records were full of conquered species. Some had been assimilated, integrated into society in subordinate roles. Others had been eliminated entirely, deemed too dangerous or too useless to preserve. It had always seemed necessary. The cost of maintaining order. But now, looking at the small human ship that had humbled his fleet, wondered if there had been another way. "What do you propose?" he asked. "Start small, exchange ambassadors, open trade routes, let our scientists and scholars talk to each other, build trust gradually through actions rather than words, and most importantly, treat each other as equals, not as conqueror and conquered but as partners." The Empire will not easily accept this. For 12,000 years, we have been the dominant force in this region of space. To treat a primitive species as equals would be seen as weakness. Smiled slightly. "I think we have already demonstrated that we are not as primitive as we appear. And as for weakness, is it really weakness to recognize that there are beings in the universe as capable as yourself? Is it weakness to make alliances with those beings, rather than enemies?" Thought about the battle. 47 ships crippled in minutes. A single human vessel dancing through their fire like it was nothing. If that was primitive, he did not want to see what advanced looked like. "I will need to consult with my superiors," he said finally. "This decision is beyond my authority." "Of course, take all the time you need. We will be here." While negotiations proceeded in space, the news of the battle was spreading across the Empire. The third battle group's defeat had been witnessed by long-range sensors on several outposts. Within days, the entire Empire knew that something unprecedented had happened. Reactions varied. Some dismissed the reports as exaggeration or enemy propaganda. The fleet was invincible. No single ship could defeat 47 warships. It was simply impossible. Others were more concerned. They demanded to see the tactical recordings, to analyze the battle for themselves. When they did, their concern turned to alarm. The evidence was undeniable. A new species had emerged from unknown space, and they possessed capabilities that the Empire could not match. High Admiral found himself at the center of a political storm. The Imperial War Council convened in emergency session, demanding answers that he could not provide. How had this happened? What were the humans capable of? What should the Empire do in response? "We should send the entire First Fleet," declared Admiral, one of the more aggressive council members. "Show these humans what happens when you challenge the Empire. Crush them so thoroughly that no one ever dares to resist us again." "With respect," replied, "we do not yet understand what we are facing. The third battle group was not a minor force. It included some of our most advanced ships, crewed by experienced officers, and they were defeated by a single vessel without suffering a single casualty. Then we send 100 vessels, 1,000. Eventually, numbers must prevail. Must they? What if these humans have more ships like the Resolute? What if they have even more advanced technology that they have not yet revealed? We could be sending our fleets to destruction. Admiral scoffed. You sound like a coward. Is this what has become of our once proud military, afraid of a single small ship? Felt his scales flush with anger, but he kept his voice steady. I am not afraid of dying in battle. I am afraid of dying stupidly. There is a difference. We need more information before we can make a rational decision. The first speaker, the highest-ranking member of the council, raised a hand for silence. She was ancient even by standards, her scales faded to gray, her eyes clouded with age. But her mind was still sharp. High Admiral raises a valid point, she said slowly. We have been the dominant power in this region for 12. We have grown accustomed to victory. Perhaps we have grown complacent as well. First speaker, Admiral protested. Surely you are not suggesting we show weakness to these primitives. I am suggesting that we gather intelligence before committing our forces. That is not weakness, it is wisdom. She turned to. What do we know about these humans? Very little, first speaker. They emerged from previously unexplored space using a form of faster-than-light travel we have never encountered. Their ship is small but extraordinarily maneuverable. Their weapons are based on kinetic energy delivered at relativistic velocities, a technology we abandoned thousands of years ago as primitive. Apparently, it is not as primitive as we believed. No, first speaker. It is devastatingly effective against our current defensive systems. Our shields are designed to react to incoming threats, but the human projectiles move too fast for detection before impact. We are essentially defenseless against them. A murmur of concern ran through the council chamber. The idea that the mighty empire was defenseless against anyone was deeply unsettling. What do the humans want? The first speaker asked. Pulled up the recordings of negotiations with Captain. According to fleet commanders' reports, they claim to want peaceful relations, trade, cultural exchange. They have shown no interest in conquest or territorial expansion. And you believe them? Hesitated. I believe that fleet commander believes them. Whether they are being truthful, I cannot say. But I note that they had the opportunity to destroy our entire fleet and chose not to. They showed restraint that we would not have shown in their position. The first speaker was silent for a long moment, contemplating the display showing the human ship. Such a small thing to cause so much disruption. Very well, she said finally. We will take a cautious approach. High Admiral, you will take the Second Fleet to rendezvous with the remains of the Third Battle Group. You will observe the humans, gather intelligence, and attempt to open formal diplomatic channels. You are authorized to engage in preliminary negotiations, but any final agreements must be approved by this council. And if the humans attack, Admiral demanded. Then the High Admiral is authorized to defend himself, but he is not to initiate hostilities. Is that understood? Yes, first speaker replied, I understand. 3 days later, the Second Fleet arrived at the location of the Third Battle Group. 200 warships, including the massive flagship Eternal Dominion, emerged from faster-than-light travel and took up position at a respectful distance from the crippled ships and the small human vessel. Captain Daniel watched the new arrivals with a mixture of hope and concern. More ships meant more potential enemies, but it also meant that the leadership was taking this situation seriously. They would not have sent such a large force just to destroy the Resolute. They could have done that with a fraction of these ships. They were here to talk. Commander Grant said, prepare a formal diplomatic greeting. Make it clear that we welcome their arrival and look forward to productive discussions. Aye, Captain. The message was transmitted and a response came quickly. The commander of the new fleet wanted to meet, face to face, not through holographic links. He was willing to come to the Resolute in a small shuttle, alone and unarmed. Agreed. An hour later, High Admiral stepped aboard the human ship. He was escorted by Commander Grant through narrow corridors that felt cramped compared to vessels. The ship was smaller inside than he had expected, every space efficiently used. The crew he passed watched him with curious eyes but showed no fear. They had beaten his empire's fleet. They knew their own strength. Captain was waiting in the ship's small conference room. He was a medium-sized human with brown hair starting to gray and lines around his eyes that spoke of stress and responsibility. He stood as entered and extended his hand. A gesture that the admiral had been briefed was a human greeting. Grasped the offered hand awkwardly. Human hands were so small, so fragile-looking, and yet they had built weapons that could defeat the mightiest warships in the galaxy. High Admiral said, "Welcome aboard the Resolute. I appreciate you taking the risk of coming here in person." Captain, the risk seemed appropriate. I wanted to see your ship for myself, to try to understand how you accomplished what you did. Smiled slightly. I would be happy to give you a tour. We have nothing to hide. They walked through the ship together, the alien admiral and the human captain, saw the bridge with its sophisticated displays and quantum computing core. He saw the batteries, the missile tubes, the maneuvering thrusters. He saw the crew quarters, the mess hall, the medical bay. Everything was smaller than equivalents, more compact, more efficient. The humans did not waste space on displays of grandeur or power. Every square meter served a purpose. Your ship is impressive, admitted. Not in the way I expected, but impressive nonetheless. Thank you, she is a good ship. Reliable, fast, and she has the best crew I have ever served with. They returned to the conference room, offered refreshments which politely declined. Then they sat across from each other, two beings from vastly different worlds trying to find common ground. I have reviewed the recordings of your battle with the Third Fleet, said. I have analyzed your tactics, your weapons, your defensive capabilities. I have come to understand, I think, why you won. And why is that? Because you think differently than we do. You found weaknesses that we did not know existed. You used technology we had dismissed as obsolete. You adapted and improvised in ways that our rigid military doctrine could not counter. Nodded slowly. That is a fair assessment. But I still do not understand one thing. Why did you show mercy? You could have destroyed the entire fleet. Why did you hold back? Was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. Because killing them would not have helped us. We came here seeking peaceful contact. Slaughtering your people would have made that impossible. Even if we could have justified it as self-defense, it would have turned every in the galaxy into our enemy. And now we have a chance. A slim one maybe, but a chance. You are here talking to me. That would not have happened if we had left nothing but debris and bodies. Leaned back in his chair. The Empire does not typically negotiate with species that defy it. We conquer or we destroy. That is our way. I know, but maybe it is time for a new way. And what would that look like? Leaned forward. Partnership. Real partnership between equals. We help you, you help us. We share knowledge, trade resources, explore the galaxy together. And when conflicts arise, because they will, we resolve them through dialogue instead of violence. That sounds idealistic. Maybe it is, but idealism is how humans have achieved everything good in our history. We imagine a better future and then we work to make it real. It does not always succeed. Sometimes we fail. Sometimes we make things worse, but we keep trying. That is what makes us human. Was silent for a long time, processing the human's words. They were so different from anything he had heard before, so different from the ruthless pragmatism that guided policy. And yet, looking at this small ship that had humbled the Empire's finest fleet, he could not dismiss them as mere naivety. The humans had backed up their idealism with capability. They had proven that they could fight, and they had chosen not to. That choice, more than anything else, intrigued him. I cannot make promises, he said finally. "The Empire is ancient and set in its ways. Change will not come easily if it comes at all. I understand. We do not expect miracles, just a chance. That is all we ask." Stood up rose with him. "You have given me much to think about, Captain. I will return to my flagship and consult with my government. I cannot say what they will decide, but I will advocate for the approach you have described." Extended his hand again, this time grasped it more naturally. "Thank you, High Admiral. That is all we can ask." As walked back to his shuttle, passing through the narrow corridors of the human ship, he thought about everything he had seen and heard. These humans were strange creatures, small, fragile. Their technology was in many ways inferior to standards. But they had something the Empire lacked, a willingness to imagine different possibilities, a refusal to accept that things had to be the way they had always been. Maybe that was their greatest strength. And maybe, just maybe, it was something the Empire needed to learn. The negotiations continued for several more weeks. Slowly, painfully, progress was made. There were setbacks, moments when it seemed like war was inevitable, but each time both sides pulled back from the edge. They kept talking. They kept trying. In the end, a preliminary agreement was reached. Not a full treaty, just a framework for future discussions. Exchange of ambassadors, opening of trade routes, establishment of a neutral zone where both species could meet without fear. It was not much, but it was a start. Captain stood on the observation deck of the Resolute, watching as the fleet began to withdraw. Beside him, Commander Grant watched as well. "Do you think this will last?" Grant asked. Considered the question. "I do not know. There are people on both sides who want war, who think that conflict is the only way to resolve differences. It will be a constant struggle to keep them from taking over. So we have not really won anything. We have won a chance, a possibility. That is more than we had when we arrived," smiled slightly. "And that is how progress works. You do not win all at once. You win one small battle at a time until eventually you look back and realize how far you have come." Grant nodded slowly. "What happens now?" "Now we go home, we report what we have found, and we prepare for whatever comes next." Turned away from the viewport. "Because whatever happens, I have a feeling this is just the beginning." The Resolute's engines hummed to life. The small gray ship turned away from the fleet and accelerated into the darkness of space. Behind them, 1,000 stars burned against the void. Ahead of them, a universe of possibilities waited. Humanity had arrived in the galaxy. They had faced their first great test and survived. They had made contact with an alien empire and emerged not as conquerors or conquered, but as something new. Partners equals neighbors. It would not be easy. There would be more challenges ahead, more conflicts to navigate, more chances for everything to fall apart. But for the first time in 12,000 years, the galaxy was changing. And at the heart of that change was a single small ship crewed by stubborn, idealistic, impossible humans who refused to accept that war was the only answer. It was not the ending of a story. It was the beginning of a new one. And no one, not the humans, not anyone watching from the countless worlds scattered across the stars, knew exactly how it would turn out. But for the first time in a very long time, there was hope. And sometimes that was enough.